a veteran diplomat, ambassador, members of the diplomatic corps, chairman of the Lagos State Chamber of, and I want to deeply show our appreciation for this opportunity to speak to this very important audience on this important topic, foreign direct investment flow from South Korea to Nigeria. With your permission, my speech will be anchored on four different subheads. One, I will look at the Koreans. Who are these Koreans? Who were there before the war? Who are the Koreans, the post-war Koreans? I'll properly dwell in the new foreign direct investment from Korea. I will not bore you with all the stumbling blocks of investment from Korea. Who are the Koreans? Koreans, as an entity with over 4,000 years of history, was colonized in 1910 by her maritime neighbor to the east, Japan. In 1945, after years of unsuccessful struggle against Japanese imperialism, the country was liberated by Allied forces at the end of the Second World War. Regrettably, the country soon became a victim of the ideological conflict between the then superpowers, North and South Korea. However, in an attempt to forcefully reunite the country, the North invaded the South in 1950 at the head of a 16-nation United Nations force, fighting alongside with the South Korean army, who rolled back the invaders, leading ultimately to a ceasefire agreement, not a peace treaty. Today, you have these people occupying the peninsula between Japan and China. Post-war Koreans. 30 years from the reigns of this civil war, Korea presents one of the models of post-war reconstruction and economic success on the heels of the Asian tigers. Its industrial, technological, and economic evolution are being referred to as a miracle on the Han River. Miraculous transformation from the ashes of the Korean War to a wealthy and highly developed country with conglomerates like Hyundai, Samsung, STS, Hanwha, Dalian, Lotte, and many others that are today world-class players. The miracle on the Han River cannot be complete without the contribution of President Park Chung-hee, who came in through a military coup, and he ruled between 1963 and 1979, and income per capita of $100 per annum. And of course, when he was assassinated, he now left a country that had an income per capita of $10,000 per year. The successful, that tyrannical, and like I always say, the maxim of for you to conduct a beautiful orchestra, you have to back the crowd, and he did that very well. President Park's success stood on three tripods: the strength of the state, strong bureaucracy, and Korean chaebol businesses. General Park combined national and private economic interest in a way that manipulated nationalistic interest. This is one major thing he did. And he came up with this motto that you treat the employee like a family. And that engendered national pride and invoked the spirit of nationhood. And of course, now the people had something to die for. Yes, his policy was considered as very harsh, cruel, but he prohibited things like luxury goods and promoted export-oriented initiatives. Then there was the Samuel Udong movement. This is small town movement, where the can-do spirit came in. People gathered, and that resulted into what you have today in South Korea as even development. You can mention about 10 cities that are like Seoul. When you visit them, you think you are still in Seoul. And that Samuel Udong movement endangered that spirit into the people. And the KCIA became a dreaded institution. Anybody who was against the government still in the people. Then the other landmark in his administration was a 5-year development plan, which centered on the development on the area of energy. And of course, at that time, coal was a very important issue because most of the power generation were from coal-fired turbines. Agriculture was made a centerpiece, and this Samuel Udong movement actually helped in the area of agriculture. Basic economic and industrial infrastructure were installed. Employment, conservation and land utilization, and science and technology was made a major program in almost all the educational institutions. The issue of the chabols, which were just small family businesses, they are really encouraged. And this, of course, grew to become the conglomerates you hear today in South Korea. Family businesses that stood up and we are encouraged by the government. Up to a point, there was a government loan policy where these organizations were not only made to have some loans, but negative interest loans, where people were supported if they have done well and they've hit a particular target, more funds were given to them. And that assisted. To the point that when you discuss about the miracle on the Han River, you discover that 60% of the success of the miracle of the Han River came from the support of about 10 chabols, 10 of these business groups. Let's look at the trade performances. Economically, South Korea is currently the 3rd world biggest economy. Some say it's the 12th. The 12th world biggest trading nation, and Asia number 3 biggest economy with a GDP of over $1 trillion. Implementing policies timely. Korea's recent trade balance increased tremendously with a GDP per capita of $31,700. As of July this year, the Korean trade volume reached $1 trillion mark with exports of about $556.5 billion and import of about $524.4. Of course, recording a surplus of $32.1 billion US, comparative advantage. According to the recent trade report, Korea is the 7th largest exporting country and 9th country with trade volume over $1 trillion, matching themselves with countries like United States, China, Japan, Germany, France, United Kingdom, Italy, and the Netherlands. I will now address specific areas that I consider as areas of core competence. What has resulted from all this push by the government and commitment of the people? First is on the area of transportation. Today, Korea, where you have in the maritime sector, of course, you know their story in shipbuilding. Today, you can have one of the biggest cruise vessels in the world, Oasis. She is right in Europe now, constructed by STS, a Korean group, and the KTS, which is the Korean train that makes 350 kilometers per hour. And then the Incheon airport, the major airport, which consecutively for 3 times now has been rated as the best airport in the world in terms of traffic management and efficiency. So, transportation being an engine for any growth in any economy, this is one area they have placed themselves. In terms of construction, outside the United States, Korea is still number 2 in overseas construction company. And you have some landmark projects like the Burj Khalifa in Dubai. That's constructed by the Samsung. You have the Twin Towers in Malaysia. One wing there was constructed by Samsung. And then you have the 18-kilometer bridge on the sea that is constructed by a conglomerate of Korean companies, consortium of Korean companies. And you look at specific areas that the Koreans have equally done well. Today, they are still number 1 in shipbuilding, with Hyundai, HHI, having the biggest shipyard in the world. Of course, there are others like Samsung, Daewoo Shipyard, Hanwha, and Hanjin. In terms of ICT, Korea is still number 1 in the world, with the highest internet speed in the world, which is today's language. Of course, how do you discuss an issue when you cannot speak the language. Today Korea is next to Japan with 14.7 kilobyte and megabyte per second and internet speed. They third in production of chips, third in partner registration, fourth in production of textiles. The good news is that some of the lathes you see in Nigeria today are not from Switzerland, they are from Korea. They are still number 5 in the production of automobiles. And you have some state-of-the-art cars like the Ecus, the Chairman, and the K9. These are top-class cars that are made by Hyundai, Samyong, and Kia Motors. Then, in petrochemical, they have, of course, developed a very robust petrochemical industry. In terms of steel, Korea is still rated as, some argue number 3, some argue number 2, with POSCO as number 3 biggest steel plant in the world. Electronics are number 1. Of course, you know the role of LG. I used to make jokes with my people that in Nigeria, virtually everything in your family, in the house, is imported except your wife. But most of them are from Korea. And then, in the area of power generation, Koreans pride themselves today at people who produce 40,000 megawatts of power for their 50 million people. And these are from combined sources, with about 16 of them from nuclear power. With your permission, I will now go into the areas are considered the new areas of foreign direct investment from Korea. Nigeria is Korea's 3rd biggest trading partner in Africa. Trade volume between the two countries is currently over $2 billion. And what is the driving force? The Koreans, they believe that we have the raw material in Nigeria, we have the cheap labor, and we have a robust market. And that these are things that should attract them to our country. There are very huge and untapped potentials. In terms of all the Korean trade volume, it's only about 2% that is coming to Africa. And if we are occupying number 3, that means there is huge potentials to be tapped from that country. But the specific areas that I think we should look at are in the areas of power. For power supply, which is still our greatest problem as a nation, Koreans, like I mentioned, they have perfected themselves to the point that they are producing 70,000 megawatts. And the power production in Korea, virtually every member of the chaebol, every member of the conglomerate is into power production. So power production is additional business to most of them. And of course, they have seen that the environment is almost like saturated. They are looking for jobs overseas to make enough revenue. And for us, of course, the recent deal of Daewoo, we just signed an MOU on the 5th of July for a 10,000 megawatts power deal with Daewoo. That, of course, in terms of funds, is going to attract huge billions of dollars from that country to Nigeria. Still in the area of power, most of these private sectors, knowing fully well that the market is here, once we're able to get the power pricing right and the gas supply issue right, they are willing to come in to invest in Nigeria power on a long-term basis. And there will be associated businesses, manufacturers of transformers, gear switch systems will come in, and these things, of course, will turn into additional things. The deal between Nigeria, NNPC, and the Korean National Oil Company, part of that package, when our former president, Chief Olusegun Obasanjo, visited Seoul, was to install 1,250 megawatts of power between Abuja and Kaduna by the KEPCO, Korean Power Company, the equivalent of NEPA. And, of course, installation of about 1,250 megawatts of power is huge. But because there is still an issue of litigation, that issue is still at a bear. On the area of nuclear power, it sounds strange to a lot of people when you just mention nuclear power, following what transpired, what happened in Japan. People are scared. But nuclear power still remains one of the cleanest and the cheapest source of huge power. And if you consider our location, within our neighbors, Niger Republic, and some of our northern states, there are huge deposits of uranium that, if properly harnessed, that will enable us. But how do we go about this? All we need to do is to package a proper build, own and operate transfer scheme. We have the Korean companies on their own, since they have perfected in this technology, will come in with their resources, since they have realized there is enough market, and build such plants, manage such plants for a very long time. That area, of course, you know the story that's on now with United Arab Emirates, a particular Korean company. They have a deal for $20 billion on installing a nuclear plant for that country. I want to go to the second area, which is shipbuilding, shipyard. Nigeria is so blessed as a coastal country with about almost 850 kilometers of coastline, and we have a lot of landlocked countries. Koreans have identified this and discovered that with our position in the Gulf of Guinea, so when you look at Nigeria, right from the coast of Nigeria down to Luanda, there is no ship repair yard. So they've identified that this is a potential area of investment, and they've showed interest in some specific areas. The Baka Deep Sea Port Jetty, which we're supposed to come up in Akwa Ibom, they've expressed interest on this already. The Brass LNG, Hyundai has expressed interest. Hyundai, Daewoo, STX, they've expressed interest in investment in such areas. And of course, the cocoa, oil and gas complex. These areas are, of course, such investments are long-term investments, and they are things that will be a major driving engine into the foreign direct investment. Food security. As a deliberate policy, Korean government has earmarked $11.3 billion for green growth development. There is a mandatory use of biofuel to blend their diesel. They have what they call B3. That is by the year 2012, which we are in now, 3% every diesel, they will have to blend it with 3% biofuel. And they have what they call B12, which will bring them to the year 2030. 12%, any of their diesel will be blended with 12% of biofuels. How do you get these biofuels? They are from palm tree, from maize, or from jatropha. And these things are plants that require huge acreage of land, which they do not have. What the land in Korea, is interesting to know that 70% of it is mountainous. So they are looking forward overseas in this venture. Of course, there was a transaction that took place in Madagascar where the Koreans targeted about 3.2 million acres of land for planting of maize. And of course, they were to invest almost, Daewoo Logistics was to invest almost $6.1 billion on that transaction. These are the areas we could make available, opportunities that we will tap, because as long as it's a national program for them, they are determined to grow these crops overseas. Today, they are considered as the third biggest importers of corn in the world. Then iron and steel. In the area of iron and steel, what you need only two major materials in making steel: coal and the iron itself. Korea today is investing huge amounts of money in Australia in their coal mines, investment in coal. POSCO is rated as the second or the third biggest steel plant in the world, with most of these resources coming from outside and exporting their products. We have huge and one of the best qualities of coal in the country. Very low sulfur coal at Enugu Okpara coal mine, and within the Kogi and Benue belt. We have quite a lot of coal deposits. But of course, it's important to know there is no way you develop any solid mineral without a good railway system. It's important to mention that. And then for iron ore, we have very good iron ore deposits with very low, very high iron contents, both at Itakpe, Agbaje, and most of the areas in Kotun Karifi. In Nigeria, we have these good deposits. Of course, the Koreans who are willing to come in, as long as we are able to bridge the gap in terms of transportation, because that's one of the major impediments. And then security. I want to look at security not on a negative way, but on the very positive note, that the Koreans are ready to come and partner with us to retool the Defense Industry Corporation of Nigeria. LG Securities have showed interest on this. I think they visited the sites and discussions are on. And the steel truck plant in Bauchi could be equally be retooled with the molds refurbished in such a way that we will be able to make some military hardwares, military vehicles, not only for Nigeria, for ECOMOG, and of course, United Nations contribution from our country. So these are still happen between us and Korea. Construction industry. During the last visit of Mr. President to Korea on the nuclear summit program, we had an economic seminar, and there was a presentation to the Koreans about the housing deficit. Foundation work where you do either mat or rough foundation. For them, they have developed a cheaper technology. And in the other areas of materials, most of the zinc-coated materials that you see today that are being used here are imported from Korea. And they are willing to partner in our housing program with the very low interest rates from loans from Korea. Oil and gas. Korea is still the 5th biggest oil importer in the world and the 2nd biggest importer of LNG. Yes, this we have centered as our major product, but there are still quite a lot to be done within that area. If you look at the Korean National Oil Company, they've been virtually in almost every continent in the world trying to secure oil, which they believe is the lifeblood of the Koreans. But it's unfortunate that the transaction that was signed in 2005, the only one in Nigeria, is an issue of litigation. And of course, the Koreans are already in Ghana doing some projects. Refinery and petrochemicals. Today, Korea has 2.6 million barrels per day refining capacity. So that means Koreans are even ready to refine all that we produce as crude in Nigeria. I had a tour of SK Refinery, and it was amazing that it took me almost a whole day visiting one particular refinery. In terms of petrochemical, this is one area we have not fared well as well. They are willing to partner with us. The LMA petrochemical that the Indoramas are in, I'm aware that LG Chemicals has bought about 20% of that interest in that area. They are willing to come in directly on their own to come into petrochemicals, because today they still produce about 25 million tons of petrochemicals per year, and most of these are from derivatives from their refineries, with which the raw material is all imported. Diaspora Fund. In the year 2009, we saw that about 18 billion remittances came from Diaspora Fund. But I want to mention a particular issue. In South Korea, we have about 2,700 Nigerians. 80% of them are factory workers, and with all their families here in Nigeria. And virtually on average, they remit $1,000 every month to their families. But the bad news is that most of them are working illegally in South Korea. So I believe once we're able to refine and retool most of the issues of labor arrangements, these people can legitimately do their work, and more of our young ones that are looking for such labors could go overseas and secure such things. Filipinos have done that very well, and I believe that we have an opportunity. Export and Free Zone Authority. Free trade are still the major special economic zones for implementation of liberal market economic principles. They are seen as instruments to enhance the acceptability and credibility of the transformation policies and to attract foreign investment. Let me now go quickly to recommend things I will consider that should fast-track these foreign direct investments. One is national security. National security in different ways. First, the ways our security issues are being publicized is completely in a negative way. Yes, there are issues that are on ground, but certain things are being done that negates the interest of these foreign investors. Just yesterday, I was on the net, I saw a group of people from Southeast saying that they are declaring for self-interest of governance, in Southeast. The same we had the other day from Ogonis. These things are not very good signals to an investor, because it tells them that the situation is not stable. And on the cases of internet, this advanced fee fraud scam, it has become almost an issue that you see every second. And for Koreans, whatever you mention anything to them, the first they need to do, they have so much belief on internet relationship, and only for them to discover on daily basis that these things are coming from fraudsters. For us, it's been a major consular issue, and almost on weekly basis, these news are seen. Financial guarantees. For anybody to do business here, his interest is to make money at the end of the day, whether it's short term or long term. And one thing they will require from you as a nation whatever they are bringing in, what is the guarantee of the security? So the issue of sovereign national wealth fund definitely has to be addressed by this nation, because it is one of the things that will give confidence to any investor about our nation. Resolution of the KNOC and MPC. This deal, which was actually on the instance of Nigeria, of course, was cancelled without the consultation of the Koreans. And right now, it's an issue of litigation. I may not go dwell into it, but I want to let you know that Koreans would not want to discuss business with anybody until that issue is resolved, because it's a major life wire for the Koreans. And I believe that the next Nigerian-Korean Joint Commission, this issue will be discussed and resolved, so that these opportunities that some other West African countries are making huge gains, that will, as a country, that will be able to go in and penetrate. The area of free trade zone, of course, that area is the only area that can give quite a lot of incentives to Korean investors, and the issue of industrial parks should be able to, the infrastructure should be put so that there will be small-scale industrial parks that will be able to get on, and Koreans will come in and take control of that area. Infrastructure, cost of doing business in Nigeria, this must be addressed by the government to facilitate trade. Then, Joint Commission. There should be regular interaction between Nigeria and Korea on issues that have to do with our relationship. For me, singularly, and on behalf of my mission, I think I completely give approval to the issue of setting up Nigerian-Korean Joint Chamber of Commerce. And then, for most of these projects we are discussing, for people to come in and invest hugely, our procurement system really need to be reformed. If you are inviting somebody to invest huge amount of money in dam projects, or nuclear projects, do not subject him to rigorous procurement process that sometimes is not very clean. Such people, there should be one-on-one discussion, and such negotiation should be concluded for them to come in on their investment. And of course, I talked about the labor relationship and the presidential visit. Mr. President is the #1 salesman of the country, and of course, he's been doing that, and it's my desire that such one-on-one visits to his counterparts in a country like Korea will give them more confidence to coming into Nigeria to sort out issue and invest, especially in long term. Finally, let me look at one particular area: registration of genuine Nigerian partners. Koreans, quite unlike the other major country in Asia, are not interested in coming to do any project with a project that will attract 100 labor and they bring 95. Koreans are interested in bringing top-class technocrats in that and allow Nigerians to do the business. And for them to do this with Nigerians, they need genuine partners that will really assist them, and partners that they will go to the website and identify their websites and be able to know that these are the kind of things they need to do. So I believe once we are able to put things, especially some government policies that will attract investment, and the willingness and our attitudinal change, I believe that what we are looking for, this investment inflow from Korea, will definitely come in. Thank you.